Yeah, so thanks for coming today, everybody. I didn't get this ad out to my ag collaborators soon enough, so probably a lot of them can't come, but I'm going to be sending them the recording of this. I'm happy to have Dylan Keon here today. He's been working within EECS for a while as the Associate Director of Northwest Alliance of Computational Science and Engineering, NACSE, I guess I'll pronounce it that way. But this is a really big, it's been an interesting center-like entity here at OSU that deals a lot with weather data. And you'll hear a lot more about that today. But they've really had a big influence in a lot of, you could say, policy and government projects. So I think I will just let Dylan get started. And if you do have questions during the talk, feel free to just put them in chat. I'll try to watch that. Dylan might have a hard time, or unmute at the right time and ask them, but we'll also have time for questions at the end. So with that, I'll let you take the floor, Dylan.
Great, thanks, Alan. Yeah, feel free to break in with questions. And yeah, Alan, that would be great if you could watch the chat and alert me. I probably won't see it. So nice to be with you all today, virtually. As Alan said, my name is Dylan Keon. I'm the Associate Director here at NACSE. The title of my talk, if you can see on the screen here, I won't dive too far into the weeds on any particular project or approach, even though we could make multiple talks out of this. But instead, I'll try to give you an overview of like who we are at NACSE and what we do, and some key areas of research, particularly with regard to decision support systems and sort of the data management and gathering management and modeling and control that goes into that. So I hear a lot from a lot of folks in Kelly, you know, what is NACSE? Who are you guys? What do you do? You're in this mystery space on the second floor. So I'll try to quickly give you an overview. We were founded in 1995 by Sherry Pancake with some collaborators as OSU's first interdisciplinary center. We've worked with a number of colleges over the years, COE, COF, CAS, and COS. Pretty much everyone except vet med and pharmacy. Most of our current staff, I think we have 12 or 13 right now, are appointed through EECS and CBEE, but we have a couple others. We've had a very diverse portfolio of funding over the years. Donations early on from industry, but then the bulk from federal agencies. That continues today. NSF, USDA, et cetera. There's a kind of an alphabet soup of federal groups that we've worked with and state groups, but also not-for-profits and other programs such as AWWI, PEER, et cetera. So our projects are all over the place. The timing varies, but our funding has been steady over the years. We went from 500K to 1.5 million in 15 years. We're still growing at about that rate. And since the beginning, we've always been on soft money. We've been funded from external sources, and that continues today. So our mission is the same as it has always been, to leverage advanced tech to support scientists and engineers. That has evolved over time, of course, with technological advancements, science and engineering needs. But what we feel makes our approach unique is that we start with what users say they need the most. We work with them back and forth to research and develop the tools, analyses, et cetera, that meet those needs, and then think about what we're doing through that process so that we can hopefully leverage what we've built later on. And we've had some great successes in that manner. So we really focus in on how can resources be managed in response to environmental variability, especially when the data most needed don't exist or are spotty. And I'll show you some examples of this as we go along. So to deal with that, we try to first identify and then gather, bring together, large amounts of tangential data and develop novel methods for using the data, compensate for what's missing, fill in the holes, so to speak. So what do we deal in? Lots of environmental measurements. You can see our little group of mini picks here. We pull in vast amounts of data on a routine basis. Each night we pull in weather obs from about 62,000 stations nationwide. We've developed relationships with a number of networks across the country and have developed systems for dealing with the incoming data. Our reputation has been built on our ability to pull in all types of data, all types of formats, merge them into a cohesive collection that we can then work with to run analyses and build tools. So weather radar, terrain, soils, I won't run through all these, but these are mostly, I say except for coastal bathymetry, these are things that we are currently working on right now. And I'll just point out solar power because I realized I didn't make a slide about this in this talk, but I want to mention this is an active area of research for us, and we are currently pulling in solar observations from sensors around the country and just put together an agreement with a group that is allowing us to pull from about 3,000 rooftop solar installations across the US from people who have opted in for science. So that's a really cool area for us and is one more piece of the puzzle for developing this ultimate goal that we have of all these environmental data sources. But data is really just the underpinning. All measurement data has issues, as most of you on this talk know, I'm sure. We've developed a lot of methods for applying quality control, applying analytics, cleaning, aligning, interlacing all these heterogeneous data sources. I won't go, like I said, into the weeds too much on this, but I'll just talk about it tangentially. Our projects cover the other three major dimensions of what we consider data science. As you can see in the chart here, we touch upon all these areas: computational spatial models, derived data, system usability. So as I run through these slides, I'll show examples of each one. So let's talk about our most widely used computational spatial model, and that would be Prism. You guys have probably heard of Prism, and we run Prism here on a daily basis to estimate weather and climate variables on a continuous grid of millions of pixels, tens of millions of pixels across the entire country. So if you're familiar with gridded data, we operate a resolution of 800 meters. So each grid cell that make up the millions across the country is about 800 meters on a side. Prism has unparalleled name recognition. It is now the official source of long-term weather climate data for the USDA. It's also the primary source of historical climate data for a number of federal agencies and others. And you can see a couple of our maps here at the bottom. What is Prism? Well, there are a lot of locations in the US where there are no weather observations. Especially in the West, there are great distances between sensors. So to create a continuous map across the country, the station observations that we gather nightly are fed into this sophisticated computer model called Prism. This was developed by Chris Daly in the 1990s, and he's our chief scientist here at NACSE and is the brain behind Prism. Prism estimates both weather and climate variables such as temperature and precip every day. So just to clarify, weather maps show what occur from day to day. So if I back up a slide, the map on the left is a weather map showing what happened on June 2nd, 2014. The map on the right would be considered a climate map showing the 30-year normal precip for the month of July. And again, I have the 30-year normal precip map here. However, it's our latest one for the period 1991 through 2020 for the month of January. So Prism, my point is Prism is used to produce both of these types of maps. Again, Prism fills in areas where no observations exist. It is unique in that it mimics the thinking an expert meteorologist would follow. It takes a number of factors into account: elevation, coastal effects, orographic, temperature inversions, terrain barriers, etc. all of that gets fed into or considered in the Prism model, which then outputs the map that you see on the right here, which is actually the Grand Canyon. So where does Prism fit in at NACSE? Well, as I mentioned, Dr. Chris Daly worked on this in the 90s. He believes the core development of the model was complete by about 2001. The Prism Climate Group, which was then in Strand Ag Hall, joined NACSE in Kelly in 2007, and immediately was a great marriage of skills and tools. They were able to take advantage of our expertise in computer engineering, computational geography, spatial analysis, et cetera. And the NACSE facilities and expertise here made it possible to operationalize the Prism model. Prior to coming over here, they were producing data on a monthly basis. After they came here, we realized with a bunch of work, we could make it happen on a daily basis. And we did that. And now we produce about 1,000 data products each day, grids, graphics, et cetera. And monthly updates produce even more. So Prism is kind of considered our bread and butter in terms of how we, run the system here operationally, and through the investment that we get through Prism, we are able to keep improving our IT infrastructure. But really, it accounts for about 20%, the core Prism model, about 20% or less of NACSE staff time. The rest is spent on client requests, evolving needs for specialized models, decision support tools. So building tools and running special analyses are what take up most of our time now. Here's one example of a model. We worked with DOE and specifically the Sun Grant Initiative to estimate biomass across the country for crops that can be used for biofuels, bioproducts. So you see on the maps, we have switchgrass, energy cane, et cetera. This was a significant effort in which we built a modeling framework kind of built upon the Prism platform that allowed us to produce data behind the maps, and then ultimately the maps, and compare yield potentials of these crops. And this is a case where we actually met with experts across the country a number of times to sort of fine tune these models and produce output that everyone thought made sense. So these were then used as the primary input to DOE's economic analyses for estimating biomass for biofuel crops. The Sun Grant study also allowed us to develop a model, a transportation and routing model that was tied to the idea of biofuels, to the effort of that project. What we did is we modeled the effects of transportation for this area in Eastern Oregon near Boardman. This was wheat production. The brown areas you see are wheat production. And we had to determine sort of an efficiency model for transport of the products through Boardman, what would be the most economical route, et cetera. So this was also funded by the Sun Grant Initiative. As you know, as many of you probably know, we were a significant partner in the OSU's NACSE effort out at the Wave Lab. We did a bunch of instrumentation out there and data capture, and then data processing. So there are a couple of just quick examples here: image rectification and registration on the wave basin, and also a really cool effort from one of our staff to detect and map the leading edge of a wave in real time in video. This proved very helpful to researchers as a method for them to help make sense of and analyze their data using video. So those are just some real quick examples, but moving from models to data products, we would say most of our contributions to science take the form of derived data products. Some of these are generated using our computational models, others are created through various analyses or applying algorithms directly to the data. The products themselves are specific to the requirements of a particular project. Like I said earlier, we try to leverage what we've done before and reuse our products if we can. So especially when we're working with other domains or communities who have similar needs, we try to match those up. So some examples of our derived products, of course, the Prism gridded data and graphics, like I showed you, the wave output grids of wave propagation from tsunami modeling and inundation in coastal areas, air pollution threshold data, and I'll show you a slide about this a little bit later. We've worked with the USGS on fish virus isolates, calculating gene sequence matching, and this was also a nationwide initiative. And we've worked a bit with folks in geography on a global project looking at spatial associations of boundary water treaties. So let's jump into what we think is our best known derived product. If any of you are gardeners or you plant perennials or whatever, you may be familiar with the concept of the USDA plant hardiness zones. I was in Costco last year and they had a large map printed out of this very thing right here. Also, if you go to the store and you look on the back of a seed packet, sometimes you'll see this map and it shows you which zone you were in the area you're going to be planting to help you determine which plants will do best in that location. So prior to 2008, prior to the mid-2000s, the plant hardiness zone map had been a hand-drawn product that took years to produce and wasn't really considered to be that accurate. We were contracted in the mid-2000s to develop a digital version, sort of an updated version of the plant hardiness zone map, and we were able to apply the Prism model to this. This is a refereed data product. It was rigorously reviewed by a panel of experts. It's considered to be the most heavily used climate map in the world. And when this went live, it had 100 million accesses within the first week. It was hosted on the cloud through AWS, et cetera. It still receives about 500,000 visits a month, and we recently signed a contract with USDA ARS to create an updated version of this, so it'll probably be another year plus. The peer review takes quite a while for this, but we can expect an update on this hopefully in the next year or so. Another derived data product is what we call crop risk factors. So we've worked with USDA RMA for the last 12 years or so. RMA outside of agriculture is kind of this little known agency with a few hundred employees, but they manage about $150 billion in insured crop value. And they do this through 13 independent insurance companies. So we here at NACSE have assumed this sort of dual role where we work on both on the claims side of insurance, we help those folks, and then we also help directly USDA on the underwriting side. So we build, this could be a whole separate talk, but we build a number of tools, decision support systems that help insurance adjusters determine what happened. So in the past, so on the top photo there, you see hail on the ground. Hail damage, severe weather is something that can really affect crops negatively and cause loss of yield, loss of harvest. Drought, too much rain is another factor. So we provide tools that allow the insurance adjusters to say, here's what happened in the past. On the underwriting side, we provide a number of analysis tools, as we call them, or decision support tools that leverage the Prism data and derive products from the Prism data to help federal crop insurance folks underwrite areas, determine what the parameters should be for underwriting. Several years ago, we worked on a different type of routing project looking at human response, evacuation, during natural disasters. So in this particular case, it had to do with wave inundation at Seaside, Oregon. This was a collaboration through the NSF HSD initiative with fluid dynamicists, social scientists, and we developed methods for sort of this dynamic spatiotemporal mapping of human status and movement, where all of these elements are linked. The model determines, the depth of the water at every particular point and the interaction with a person who's evacuating. This was a really interesting project for us to work on. So jumping away from that into the sort of the usability aspect of what we do, we feel like we stand out from the pack due to our focus on usability. It's not just enough to provide analytics and accuracy. We need to have scientists and engineers feel like they can apply what we build efficiently and effectively to their own task structure. So our challenge then is understanding what makes a tool intuitive for users who may have varying levels of domain knowledge. For instance, crop insurance adjusters, they are not climate or IT savvy. So the tools that we build, everything must be really obvious and easy to use. Tsunami engineers, they're domain specialists, but typically limited IT experience. So we build tools that allow them to sort of find and understand the functionality quickly and be able to effectively use the tools that we build. We do make a couple of, or have made a couple of products for what we call power users, folks who really know what they're doing, don't mind the complex task sequences, and I'll show you an example of that later. We would say our success is evidenced by these large sustained user communities that we've built. Our public websites and tools and data don't require a login, but we know from logs that we've had millions of accesses and downloads each month. Our controlled access portals have some decent sized communities. The COCORAS network, which is a citizen science network for precipitation monitoring, has about 25,000 members now, and we pull data from them on a daily basis. And again, we've got sizable numbers for our other portals. So what are some of the online analysis tools? Well, here's one example for USDA RMA. And the point is that we code into these things smart defaults, user-specific memory. It makes it really easy for, in this case, insurance adjusters to log in, to check conditions on the ground, at a field, on a particular day very quickly. And they can compare it to what's considered normal, looking at the 30-year normal. What's considered normal for that area for precipitation and temperature. And that just takes a few clicks for them to do this. The results are in plain English, and then you can generate a PDF report as a document and attach it to the file. So USDA RMA really likes this and has settled upon this as the standard for their the insurance adjusters that they contract with. So moving into the more sort of core decision support systems, on the underwriting side, the underwriters need to be able to play what if for different possible weather scenarios. This particular decision support tool, it allows them to set different temperature thresholds and compare freeze dates across the country at a county level. This is the level that USDA tends to like to work at. So we don't love sort of aggregating things to the county level since we have much finer scale data, but we do it for them, and actually ended up being a pretty cool set of tools. So the entire US-wide freeze date, this interface represents every country in the 48 states. And if you click on a county, sorry, not every country, every county, if you click on a county, you can see down below that you receive the freeze dates, which we have calculated from Prism data sets here on the back end, and then offer in this tool. And of course, they can click to download the entire data set, pull it into their own GIS, which some of the power users at USDA do. So here's one more example, a little bit more zoomed in. This is a slightly different tool that allows insurance underwriters to determine growing degree days. It's a measure of the heat accumulation needed for the growth and development of plants. So if you see in the table down below, here I've clicked on our own county, Benton County, and you can see the table summarizing the GDDs. So again, these are countyized data sets that were derived from Prism data, have gone through rigorous quality control and then testing by USDA. And this is the tool that the RMA insurance underwriters use to determine freeze dates, growing degree days, and a couple of other factors. Shifting gears to a different area, still within USDA though, this is a long-running project that we've had with the US Forest Service. We've been working with them since the late 90s. And this particular project is the National Lichen and Air Quality Database. So lichens, as we have tons of here in the Northwest, are actually great indicators of air pollution because they don't get anything from the substrate they're on. They get all of their nutrients and moisture from the atmosphere. So as such, they function as bioaccumulators and great indicators of air pollution. So the Forest Service and the Park Service and some others have a monitoring program where they sample lichens across the country and run them through some kind of assay and determine the pollutants that are in the tissue. This is a long-running project, as I said, and has built a really rich database that we host here and built tools to allow folks to freely query and map the results. So what you see in the map here is a sort of a derived product that we built called threshold data. So these are calculated thresholds for a particular species and pollutant. What you're looking at here, where you see all the red dots, is the Columbia Gorge, and the element that was selected is nitrogen. So you're looking at nitrous oxide pollution present that was picked up by the lichen samples in the Columbia Gorge. And we're still working with these folks. We just had a talk with them the other day about doing a next round of improvements. Auto-generated reports. I mentioned reports earlier. This is a really special report. In the early days of our work with RMA, they asked us to create what's called a sort of 16-month prevented planting report. This is a specific product, specific set of information that USDA needs. And it took us quite a while to put all the pieces together into one report for this. And it happened enough times that we figured we gotta sort out a way to automate this, and we did. And one of the key aspects of this is that we applied natural language methods to generate reports automatically from the data into plain English. So it took a long time to develop, but it was worth it. And now they can, with a few clicks, generate this in about 20 seconds. Used to be longer, but we knocked that number of seconds down using some hardware and software improvements. It does a lot on the back end to calculate all this, but USDA is very happy with the result, and this is quite heavily used. One other area of usability and sort of an interesting area of research that we are currently working on is what we call the daily normals. So official climate maps have a standard 30-year normal period, and that is kind of our flagship product here that provides the underpinning for a lot of other derived data sets and modeled data sets. And what we're doing now is active research into producing daily normals. This is something that hasn't really been done before. So we're leveraging the power of our 40+ years of daily data to create this new product. And now it's becoming possible to visualize and query the progression of climate patterns across the US on a daily basis. So I'm going to try to click on this and just show you a quick animation. Hopefully this will work. Okay. So this is 1 year's worth of the daily precipitation normals. If you watch in the Arizona area, you can see it's drying out here in April and May. Really dry into June, and then bam, in July we get the monsoon season coming in. Meanwhile, in the Willamette Valley, we just passed our driest period, July and early August, and now we are in September, October. It's getting much wetter finally through November and December. So now that we are producing these normals, we were able to create animations and derived products like this, and actually are talking about creating a tool that allows people to sort of custom produce animations of these data products going forward. So that would be a new thing for us. So getting back to sort of the expert level tools, this is a great example of that. And the way we've been thinking about this is we're really democratizing sort of these complex spatiotemporal analytics. We're giving people access to these things, to these data sets and methods that really wasn't there before and is difficult in most cases for them to do on their side. So for instance, it wouldn't be feasible for them to download terabytes of Prism data sets and then run all these custom calculations on their side. We can do it here on the back end using our specialized tools and our data stores. And all they have to do is open a web browser and log in and go to this tool, and they have incredible resource at their fingertips. So this particular tool is called the Prism Raster Calculator. And it's really flexible. It lets the user configure customized tasks, performing complicated raster algebra calculations, right? Stacking grids together and then drilling through to calculate all the pixels based on the operation being performed. The data products can then be pulled out and brought into a GIS on USDA side, which is what they're doing. They're also using this to custom produce graphics or images that they then put into presentations to show that USDA admin folks upstairs, basically. So we are really happy with this one, and think it has a lot of future potential as well. Just to talk about this a little bit further, the way that we're providing fast access to these really large stores of time series data is what we call the grid server. The problem was we needed a way to quickly drill through thousands and thousands of grids to return time series data in response to a web-based request. It's a web-based request, so it needs to be fast unless you want it to be scheduled or something, or notify the user later. In our case, we wanted a fast response. So we developed what we call the grid server. We can quickly index into Prism grids to retrieve the cell values. And this is, at its core, developed using Python, runs on really fast servers, and provides great performance. This is the underpinning of what we call our data explorer. Again, this is a democratizing of data. It allows people to go and click on a point, and then in under a second, pull back 40 plus years of daily data for that one particular point on the ground. We also offer a bulk download option that lets people do multiple points if they have a lot of study sites for instance. People find that useful. So just a comment to geek out for a second on hardware and performance. We are always trying to do better. And what you see here are some statistics on our old grid server, one of our old grid server machines, and one of our newer ones. And the big difference is we went to solid state drives on the newer ones, and we can store all of these specialized data sets on there and drill through them much quicker. So if you look in the second to last row, query time, this is for all of the grids. When I first made this table, it's about 95,000. We can now drill through that in about 8.7 seconds to return a time series for every variable. And the time per 1,000 grids went from half a second to 9/100ths of a second. So a lot of numbers and stuff on here, but the point is we are always trying to make things faster, and that involves both software and hardware improvements. So just a bit of history with spatial analysis and data manipulation, since this really underlies a lot of what we do. Way back around 1999 or 2000, we started dabbling in online mapping using an early product from Esri called ArcIMS. And we did some one-off things with different tools. We tried Oracle Spatial, but ultimately we moved toward open source software solutions, which is what we use today for almost everything. In fact, our processing chain is built entirely upon open source software, and you can see some of the products there. We love using Python and NumPy and GDAL. Very fast, flexible, programmatic processing and analysis of raster data, which is at the core of a lot of what we do. And we use the GDAL, or GDAL as the developer calls it, raster library in many different ways. It's incorporated into a lot of what we do. So just to give a couple of comments about how we fit into COE and OSU, I'll close out with these slides. So as a research center here, we focus on OSU and COE's research mission. We consider our projects to be on the cutting edge of research in environmental data science, data analytics. Since Prism Group joined us in '07, the scholarly output at NACSE includes really great funding. We're very happy about our funding that we've been able to land. You can see our publications and citations here. The Prism publications about Prism itself, the ones that we've published, are widely cited. It's considered to be the most widely cited source of historical climate data in the world. It has over 14,000 citations to date. We're also proud of our strong support for OSU and COE's outreach and extension mission for NACSE models, the data products that we produce every day, the tools that we produce. They're used daily by thousands of scientists and engineers. They're considered critical for both research and practice. They're used by every federal agency pretty much across the board, used across the full spectrum of public and private sectors. We can't quantify exactly the users since we don't do any kind of user logins or tracking on the public website. But we do track how many downloads there are of our data sets, and we're currently at about 1 million downloads per month. That's of the raw gridded Prism data sets, not any derived graphics or anything like that. We have about 6,000 various users on our various platforms, and I mentioned the 25,000 Kokoraz folks. Our derived data products and images are often in professional and general audience journals, often on social media. We receive a couple of requests a week typically for permission to publish one or more of our graphics in a book or something. We get requests for that quite often. But the important thing we think is that our innovations have had really major ripple effects across science and industry, USDA being a big example. I think I mentioned NACSE has become USDA's partner of choice, and we are the authoritative source for environmental information, modeling, and decision support tools, particularly with regard to weather and climate data. That long-term relationship with RMA is now expanding to among USDA's other agencies. I mentioned ARS and the plant hardiness zone effort. Also NRCS with some of their SNOWTEL data. We're working with them on helping them improve their QC processing for the SNOWTEL data. And of course, the Forest Service I mentioned. An earlier example I provided with Department of Interior and USDA regarding the lichens, our analytics and tools for assessing the air quality via the lichen sampling was first developed by the Forest Service in Region 6, then expanded to other USFS regions, and then adopted across the Department of Interior. So it's also used by the Park Service. The plant hardiness zones, again, most heavily used climate map in the world. And we are now going to reassess that and update it due to changing climate. One past, ongoing, future example I didn't mention yet is the work we've done with NOAA. They contract with us to do what's called extreme precipitation mapping. And our determination of the probability and load of major rainstorms and precip has been really well received by reviewers. We've been tasked with periodic updates. The results from these efforts go into what's called the NOAA Atlas 14, which is used by practicing engineers as sort of threshold specifications for the design of drainage infrastructure. So it gives them a sense regionally, you know, what's considered, what's possible, what's the most possible extreme precip event. So in summary, going forward, our vision is to democratize data analytics for scientists and engineers, while continuing to expand and improve the quality of the data systems and analytics that we provide. So we're trying to build on our past successes at this and integration of scientific and engineering data across these analysis tools. Our first attempt was a democratization of climate analytics for insurance adjusters, which I mentioned with USDA RMA. That has really been a game changer for the crop insurance industry. It's standardized sort of claims processing in a way that was really difficult before for them because they had disparate sources of weather and climate information. So we're poised to expand that concept now to other audiences and domains and leverage what we've built before. And the response from potential sponsors has been very supportive. So we feel very confident going forward that we've sort of built a good system here. And that's all I have. So thank you very much. Happy to answer questions.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That was impressive. A lot of great stuff going on there.
Thanks, Alan.
So yeah, anybody can raise your hand or speak up and ask a question. I can ask questions forever, but I'll start with one and then see if other people have want to chime in. So I was very interested in so you have you've got a lot of weather stations, but there are limited coverages, and so it must be the case that your uncertainty about the prediction at a particular field somewhere will be different depending on the location. Do you have a way? How do you quantify your uncertainty in those predictions and communicate those?
That's a really good question, and to be honest, we don't have a great way of quantifying that uncertainty. We do receive this question from time to time, and probably, if you want to go into that in more detail, we should sit down with Chris Daly and have a discussion about it. We've talked about creating data products that sort of visualize the level of uncertainty, but we haven't felt like we have a great method to do that yet.
Yeah, that's one of the big challenges for a lot of data science, I think. You're not alone there. and I guess a related question would be, so a lot of people are depending on and using your models, and it's interesting, like once something gets used, like we'll just trust it and believe it. And what processes do you have in place to sort of validate these models as time goes on? Because all models get a little bit stale, and you probably like to tweak them to improve them. And so what processes indicate that maybe something's going wrong or right? I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah, well, there's a sort of multi-layered approach here. The modeling that we do is not completely automatic. Like on a daily basis, what we're doing, it's automated and we're putting out products and so forth. But on a monthly basis, we do a run of the prior monthly product, but we also redo all of the daily products, and every single map has eyes on it at that time by climatologists. So they're actually looking through them for any obvious issues. So that's one way in which we catch things. Another way is our products are used so heavily that we hear from the community if anything seems off. And in fact, we have made some corrections over the last year, a couple of corrections when we found we're alerted to areas where something seemed off in the model. And in both cases, it turned out to be a station that was reporting incorrectly that got missed by our QC process. Even though our QC process pulls out 99.9% of what should be pulled out, there can sometimes be a slip, and we use that slip to go into the code and figure out what's happening and why that slip occurred and fix it. So we then apply the fix, we release an updated or fixed data product for that day or range of days or months. And then we alert people through our mailing list and also on the website. Yeah, I guess that mostly covers it.
Yeah, well, I guess, yeah, if you have a lot of users, that's one robust way to spot bugs.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I mentioned that the core of the Prism model has been in place since the early 2000s, and that's true. But, around the edges, we're constantly checking and validating internally by, doing model runs and then comparing it against what we know to be true on the ground. There's a lot of that goes on behind the scenes here.
Yeah. Does anybody in the audience have a question for Dylan?
Oh, I'll ask one.
Great.
How extensive are your data sets outside the boundaries of the U.S.?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part.
So your data sets and your slides all showed the United States.
Right.
How extensively do you collect data outside the U.S.?
Right. Not extensively. We don't do any work on time series data sets outside of the United States. We have done work on normals data specifically for Alaska, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and a few other places. And on the Prism website, we have a sort of a special projects area where we host all that. We also have worked really closely with the PKIC group out of Vancouver, BC. And they actually implemented the Prism model for Northwest Canada and the BC area, and produced data products for that region based on our work. Chris and his group actually many years ago did some similar modeling for China, and they released an atlas of that. But in terms of time series data modeling, so daily products, monthly products, that only happens in 48 states.
Thanks.
Yeah. Anything else from the the audience? Well, I have a couple more questions. There's nowadays, if you ever mention data science or machine learning, people immediately think of these deep learning networks and whatnot. Have you thought of any role for that sort of technology, or played with it at all yet in your center?
We have talked about it. One area in which we are thinking that could maybe be helpful is in the area of filling in radar gaps. I didn't mention this in the talk, but we use radar east of the Rockies extensively into the development of our maps. West of the Rockies, it's a grab bag because of terrain influence. But it would be really interesting, particularly going back in time, to sort of fill in some of the gaps that we know exist in the radar data products, and we think there might be a role for machine learning in that. We haven't fleshed that out much further, but that's been in our minds.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting, and of course that would bring up a whole bunch of new computational challenges for you, of course.
Yeah.
Completely different optimization. So the last question I have is so if you look ahead and you think about some of the blind spots you might have right now, and what new data sources might come online, what types of data sources excite you the most that you see might be incorporated in the next 5 years or so?
Right now, solar is the most exciting. We really are excited about the modeling surrounding that and building it out ultimately into a new time series data product. Alongside precip and temperature, et cetera, we're planning on releasing a solar time series product on a daily basis. Ultimately, we would like to figure out how to do the same thing with wind, but wind is a lot more fickle. And we think there probably aren't enough monitoring stations to make that happen. So we might need to come up with a different approach. That's very much in the sort of distant research, let's think about it but not act on it yet area. But where we're going with all this ultimately is to have the ability nationwide to conduct essentially a water balance equation. And the only two things we're missing right now are solar and wind. So once we have solar, wind is going to look even juicier.
Yeah, I'm sure the number of sensors are only going to increase. So
yeah, that's true. But boy, wind, it can be so localized. Yeah. If you have any great ideas, let us know.
Yeah. Well, thanks. This has been great. I learned a lot. I really didn't realize you were into so many different things. So thanks again for speaking. And yeah, I'll be definitely pointing my colleagues to this talk.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks so much, Alan. Thanks everyone for coming.